Hello everyone and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The script intended for Steffy Forrester to lose a child, and Jacqueline McInnes Wood was 26 when she shed her first tears on set. Permission to feel something huge in front of strangers was what she believed acting demanded, so she let the tears flow while the cameras rolled and the lights blazed hot. She shed tears that day, but they weren't for the made-up child. Rather, they were for the genuine one she had been secretly carrying for 7 weeks and had lost the previous evening. Nobody was aware. After thanking the team and wiping her face, she returned home to an empty apartment where the silence felt like a second skin on her ribs. It was then that she realized the distinction between surrender and performance. She quietly integrated the pain into the character and continued walking, never telling anyone, not even the director who applauded her raw truth. She was 38 years old, a mother of 4 boys, and standing in the same studio 12 years later on a gloomy December morning in 2025 when she told the executive producer she was leaving. She was referred to as Mama in overlapping voices. It was a heavier line than any she had ever spoken. She replied, "I'm done after the holidays." He inquired as to whether it was burnout, money, or a better offer. She gave a headshake. It was all of them, and none of them. Her body recalled every miscarriage, every C-section, and every 4 a.m. It was the way her youngest, Brave, had gazed at her the previous evening, his tiny palm on her face murmuring, "Don't go to the big building tomorrow. Stay and build the fort. Call Sheet." It was the way Steffy Forrester started to feel as though she was being haunted by her own ghost. The producer pleaded. The authors rushed. When the news broke, her Instagram was inundated with heart emojis and entreaties from her admirers. However, Jacqueline had already packed the little leather notebook she kept in her trailer, which included the names of all the dogs she had ever loved, grocery lists, and song lyrics. Without turning around, she shut it, put it in her bag, and left. At home, the living room was filled with the heartbeat of red and green Christmas tree lights. The boys were fighting over who got to lick the spoon as her husband, Elon, was in the kitchen trying pancakes. As she watched them from the doorway, the pain that had been in her chest for years changed, grew softer, and took on the form of longing. For the everyday wonder of being there when Brave learned how to tie his shoes, when Rise questioned why the moon followed the automobile, or when Valor required her to read the same dragon book for the 100th time, not for the attention. She had never craved that. She had traded in the thunderous applause of a live studio audience for far too many of those moments. She opened a notebook to a blank page while sitting on the edge of her bed that night. A letter she would never send was written by her. To the girl who used to practice lines in a Toronto basement apartment mirror. You believed that being famous would be like flying. Every day it's like falling, slowly, as everyone looks on. You believed that becoming a mother would be a phase. The entire book is included. You believed you could accomplish both. You were mistaken. And that's all right. 3 times, she emphasized the final sentence. On December 20th, the final episode aired. The authors chose not to eliminate Steffy Forrester, hence she survived. Rather, she bought a one-way ticket on a private plane to Paris and promised her kids that she would send for them shortly. There were no screaming matches or explosions, only Jacqueline in a camel coat standing on the tarmac with her hair blown by the wind and gazing back at the fake palm trees that had never deceived anyone. Cut was called by the director. The crew cheered. She received a bouquet of white roses from someone. She grinned the tiny, courteous, practiced smile she had learned to make when her heart was exploding. A wrap party was held at a rooftop bar in downtown Los Angeles after that. There was champagne. Jacqueline performed a whole monologue on expensive shoes, while other former cast members related stories about the time the teleprompter malfunctioned. Her mind was already in the minivan, fastening the car seats and heading home, even though she was laughing in all the right places. It was 11:07 p.m. when she sneaked out. No toast, no speech. She simply walked out. It took 3 hours to drive up the coast. The salt air slapped her awake as she rolled down the windows. With the exception of the porch light Elon always kept on, the home was black when she turned into the driveway. Inside, limbs twisted in a blanket patterned with small dinosaurs, the boys were sleeping in a heap on the couch. Elon, whose eyes were red from staying up, met her in the corridor. "How did it go?" he inquired. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words escaped her. Rather, she buried her forehead against his chest and let out the ugly, loud, and necessary tears she hadn't let out in 12 years. There was mayhem and maple syrup on Christmas morning. As the dog snatched a piece of bacon, the lads tore through the wrapping paper. With her hair unbrushed and wearing flannel pajamas, Jacqueline reclined on the floor and had a sensation of a relaxation in her chest. Rise gave her a drawing of a family with stick figures beneath an uneven tree. "You're that, Mama," he remarked, gesturing to the tallest person. She nodded, hesitant to say anything, and followed the lines of the crayon with her finger. "You're home now." The tabloids published headlines in January that read, "Jacqueline quits soap in a shocking exit. Is Steffy gone forever?" A petition was established by fans. She was offered a primetime drama by a rival network. She didn't read the emails before deleting them. Rather, she signed up for a Tuesday night pottery class. In the kiln, her first bowl fell apart. The second was valid. She filled it with lemons and kept it on the windowsill in the kitchen. That year, spring arrived early. Along the street, the jacaranda trees burst into purple. She took the boys to the beach one afternoon, while Valor, 6, constructed an uneven sandcastle. Brave, now 4, chased waves. 8-year-old Rise inquired if she missed being on television. As the light warmed her shoulders, she gave it some serious thought. She remarked, "I miss parts of it. The individuals. The convergence of a scene's rhythm." However, Rise nodded as if he understood, then hurried off to bury his brother's feet. "I don't miss who I became when I was gone all the time." She had a dream about the soundstage that night. With her arms folded and her eyes alert, Steffy was waiting for her in the Forrester living room in the dream. "You abandoned me," the character uttered. Steffy shook her head when Jacqueline opened her mouth to apologize. "No. You freed me." The dream lingered in her mind like a bruise when she woke up. A letter from an unfamiliar address arrived in April. There was only one picture inside, of the cast on her first day, gathered around a cake that said, "Welcome, Steffy," with the words, "You gave us 12 years," written on the back. "We will cherish you for 50 years. No signature. She taped it into the lemon-filled clay bowl. The smell of freshly cut grass and the heat of summer arrived. For the first time in years, Jacqueline stayed at home by herself while Elon took the boys camping for a week. The development chart penciled on the pantry door, the stack of unopened fan mail she had never had time to read, and the dent in the wall from when Valor threw a baseball bat indoors were all objects she touched as she walked the house. She opened her laptop and began writing on the third night. Fragments, not a memoir, not a script. The scent of Brave's hair after taking a bath. Elon's off-key humming while taking a shower. The Pacific turned just that shade of blue around sunset. She saved the file with the name Real. Fall again after writing until her hands cramped. The lads went to school. Valor's field trip to the tide pools was chaperoned by Jacqueline, who offered her services. She assisted second graders in identifying sea anemones while squatting in damp sand throughout the day. A young girl pulled at her sleeve. "Are you a well-known person?" she inquired. Jacqueline grinned. "I am Valor's mother," she declared. After giving this some thought, the girl nodded in satisfaction. The program contacted them in November. They wanted her to make a brief appearance in 3 episodes and a wedding plot. It was obscene money. She nearly said yes. She then imagined Brave's reaction when she informed him that she would be gone for 2 weeks. She graciously declined. The producer's voice was one of relief. He remarked, "We just wanted to offer. Steffy's tale continues without you." 1 year after the announcement, December came back. "You did that." A crew-signed Christmas card was sent by the studio. There was a letter that read, "The bowl you made is on the craft services table, along with a gift certificate to the pottery studio. Now it contains the excellent cookies." She chuckled till she started crying. The family took another trip to the beach on Christmas Eve. The boys used driftwood to construct a campfire. Elon played a quiet, wordless guitar tune. Jacqueline watched the flames while bundled up in a blanket. Rise leaned in close to her. "Do you ever wish you were still Steffy, Mama?" he asked. She recalled the mother on the sand, the woman on the tarmac, and the youngster in the Toronto basement. "No," she replied. "I used to dress up as Steffy for a very long period." Later, while the boys were sleeping in the tent, she and Elon strolled to the water's edge. "This," she pointed to the fire, the boys, and the stars, "is the part one get to keep." The waters turned silver as the moon hung full and low. He grasped her hand. "Sorry?" he inquired. The constant rhythm of the water, which had outlasted all the plots, was what she listened to. "Only those who taught me what's important," she remarked. They remained till their shoes were drenched by the tide. The fire behind them had reduced to coals. The darkness stretched unscripted and wide ahead. Jacqueline McInnes would experience the full weight of her name for the first time in years, without a character, cue cards, or studio lights. Only Jacqueline. Enough. And somewhere in a Los Angeles studio, cookies were kept in a bowl fashioned by unsteady hands for others who had never learned the woman's story. The chocolate chip cookies were flawless on one side and slightly burned on the other. The bowl remained full while someone took two and put the other one away for later. For the final time that night, the studio's lights were going out. With her own eyes staring back at her as if they were strangers, Jacqueline stood motionless, her reflection trapped between two mirrors. The makeup artist had departed 30 minutes prior, leaving behind a subtle hint of powder and a lingering fragrance of roses and foundation. Aside from the subtle creak of her chair when she moved slightly and the gentle hum of the city beyond the glass, the dressing room was abnormally quiet. She had been in this world for 15 years, during which time she had experienced scripts, tears, laughter, and the peculiar cadence of a made-up life that had somehow turned into a second heartbeat. And she was on her way. December would arrive, bringing with it a conclusion she wasn't entirely ready for. She had announced it earlier that morning, her hands shaking under the table but her voice firm. "I have determined that the time has come," she had informed the producers. The group fell hushed as the speaker said, "December will be my last month." A pen was dropped. Another averted their gaze. Something softer and more melancholy, like the air that lingers before the first snowfall, filled the room instead of fury. She believed it would be liberating. It didn't. It was like leaving a lengthy, beautiful dream and discovering that the outside world was colorless and boring. Everything appeared crisper when she walked through the set that afternoon, including the way her heels clicked against the floor, the glare of the studio lights, and the hum of the cameras. There was a memory in every corner. Silent breakdowns behind closed doors, moments of feeling seen, times when she wanted to vanish, and moments of laughter in between shots. She spent a considerable amount of time perched on the edge of the couch that had been her character's living room for more than 10 years. There was still a slight smell of dust and fabric spray. With her fingertips, she traced the stitching, recalling the innumerable episodes she had filmed there, some triumphant, others terrible. And now it would all be gone, save for her. The sun was fading like an ember on the horizon as she drove home from work through the twisting streets of Los Angeles. The city was a flurry of activity and sound, yet she felt removed from it all, as if she were viewing life through a glass window. She walked into her calm home. The children had been taken to the park by her husband. She was reminded that there would soon be more stillness as it pressed against her chest. The kind of silence that creeps into the bones and whispers questions about what's going to happen next, rather than the easy, serene silence of early mornings. She sat by the window and poured herself a glass of wine. Even though December was just a few weeks away, she could already feel it pressing down on her chest. She pondered the experience of waking up without a call sheet in front of her. No hair and makeup before morning, no scripts, no outfit fittings. It's just time. She had always desired more time, and she was afraid now that she would have it. She smiled as she made her way back to the scene the following day, acting as though nothing had happened. Unaware that she was counting down the days she would spend with them, the crew gave her the warm welcome they always gave her. With the same accuracy she had perfected years before, she delivered her lines, hit her spots, and chuckled in between takes. But a silent ache deepened behind her eyelids. An old buddy from the early seasons, who also happens to be one of her co-stars, knocked on her dressing room door that evening. "Don't you really mean it?" He leaned against the doorway and spoke softly as he asked. She gave a nod. "I do." He shook his head and let out a breath. "Without you, it will be weird. For so long, you have been the center of this show." She gave a small smile. Even though his eyes told him otherwise, he said, "Maybe it's time someone else took that role." She sat still after he departed, gazing at the folded script on her desk. Her character ultimately finds peace after years of anguish in her next episode, which was one of the last ones she would film before leaving. She was amazed by how much art lately reflected her own life. Whispering the phrases to herself, she started reading them. She was surprised by the words, which said, "Sometimes you have to let go of what you love most to remember who you are without it." Feeling the beat of her heart beneath her palm, she pressed her hand to her chest. It was difficult to distinguish one from the other because she had grown so entangled with the character she portrayed. After that, the days flew by. Fans learned of her choice. Her social media was inundated with hundreds of thousands of messages, all of them full of sadness, thanks, and incredulity. "Don't leave," they wrote. She read each note, saying things like, "You're the reason I've watched all these years. The show won't be the same without you." Every single syllable. And each of them caused her to reconsider her choice a bit more. But she knew in her heart that it was correct. The show had served as both her home and her prison. Over the years, she had gradually lost something because of the never-ending plots, the long hours, and the need to be flawless. She needed to rediscover who she was outside of the role that had defined her, which she had fully committed to. The cold of early December brought her last week. The studio halls were decked out with lights, garlands, and a little Christmas tree that had been placed next to the coffee maker. Everything had a hint of bittersweetness. The set was packed on her last day. It was with crew members, directors, and old friends who had come to say goodbye, not with actors or extras. Cupcakes were brought by someone. Another person brought flowers. Hugs and silent tears were exchanged, and there was joy and sadness. She took a deep breath and relaxed as the cameras rolled for her last scene. In that instant, all of the emotions she had suppressed throughout the years came flooding out. As usual, her character gazed out a window before saying her final words in a low voice, almost audible above a whisper. When the director yelled, "Goodbye," nobody moved for a heartbeat. Then there was the loud, uncontrolled, loving applause. Jacqueline stood there grinning through shaky hands while tears streamed down her face. She received a bouquet of white roses from someone. Another person gave her a strong hug. She was at a loss for words to express her gratitude to each of them. Following the applause, there was a profound, agonizing stillness that said all that needed to be expressed. She remained after everyone had left later that evening. The objects were neatly packed away, the cameras were covered, and the stage was dark. She took a final stroll through it, her fingers gliding over the walls, the furniture, and the empty areas that seemed to be bursting with narrative. At the threshold, she stopped and turned around. It was odd that once everyone had departed, something so vibrant could feel so still. The night air was harsh and cold when she went outside. Long shadows were produced by the dim flickering lights in the parking lot. With her hands on the steering wheel, she sat in her car for a bit before turning on the engine. Older, wiser, a touch tired, but somehow lighter, she could see her reflection in the glass. She reflected on the past years as she drove home, remembering the tears and laughter and the people who had grown to be her family. She reflected on the viewers who had been with her from the start, who had witnessed her development as a person as well as an actress. Her kids were waiting at the window when she got into her driveway. When they saw her, their small faces brightened. The weight in her chest lessened as she grinned. She tucked them into bed that night and then stood by their door, listening to their gentle breathing. She experienced the silence for the first time in a long time as calm rather than empty. December developed gradually in the weeks that followed. She had not had a sense of calm in years until the holidays arrived. Every morning, she awoke without any cameras waiting for her, scripts, or alarms. Just because she could, she watched the sunrise, went for long walks with her husband, and prepared pancakes with her kids. However, a tiny ache persisted even in that tranquility, a hint of what she had left behind. She would occasionally catch herself looking at the TV when the show started, seeing and hearing people and voices she knew. She would turn down the music gently after grinning and occasionally crying. She discovered an ancient writing hidden in a drawer one evening. The pages were soiled, with highlights and notes all over them. She scanned the cover with her fingertips, recalling the sentences she had memorized. "Don't forget who you are when the lights go out" was written in her own handwriting on the final page. Gently, she closed the script and put it down. The December sky was clear outside, with bright, crisp stars. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and stepped out onto the balcony. The clean, cool air was full of possibilities. She pictured scenarios playing out, stories being recounted, and the stage lights remaining glowing in the distance. Even though she was no longer there, she was aware that she had left a piece of herself in every scene, tale, and heart that had followed her over the years. She grinned and let a tear fall down her face, but it was one of thankfulness rather than sadness. She came to the realization that ends aren't truly endings. They're just more subdued beginnings. And in the silence of that December evening, as her children slept in the rooms behind her and the city lights flickered below, Jacqueline McInnes would close her eyes and muttered to herself, "Goodbye and thank you."